I still remember the sound the horses made that morning, restless, pawing at the dirt, sniffing the empty troughs. The sun was already scorching, no clouds in sight, and there was no water. That's when I saw it, a red stamped notice flapping against my ranch gate, nailed there like some kind of execution order. Notice of water termination, effective immediately. Signed by the county. No warning, no reason. I looked across the fence, and there she was, Sandra Whitlock, standing with her arms crossed and a smug little smile, like she'd just won a prize she didn't earn. Her lips didn't move, but her eyes said it loud and clear. "Let's see how long your precious ranch lasts now." That's when something in me shifted. I'd seen droughts, storms, even wildfires, but this was different. This wasn't nature trying to wipe me out. This was someone trying to break me on purpose. And in that moment, as the dust swirled and my horses cried for water, I made a silent promise. She wants a fight? Then she just dug her own grave. Before all this, life on the ranch was steady. Not flashy, not perfect, but steady. Every morning started with the sound of hooves on dry dirt and the soft creak of saddle leather. I'd walk the fence line with my dog trailing behind, wave at the few neighbors we had, and spend my hours tending to horses that trusted me more than most people ever had. I never asked for much, just enough to keep the land breathing and the animals fed. The water that ran through this land wasn't mine alone. It was shared. A spring from the eastern ridge had fed our ranches for generations. My father had helped build the first shared line. We all respected it, never took more than we needed. It was an unspoken rule among neighbors. We didn't sign contracts, we shook hands, looked each other in the eye, and that was enough. But things changed the moment Sandra Whitlock bought the property next to mine. She didn't come to raise horses or plant roots. She came in sleek black SUVs talking about reinvestment and development potential. Built a modern house that looked like it belonged in a city, not out here where the dirt's part of your blood. At first, I tried to be neighborly. I brought over homemade peach jam, offered to help her install a livestock gate. She smiled, the kind of smile that says she's already planning how to bulldoze you. A month later, she filed her first complaint. Horse manure odor exceeds rural code limits. Then it was the dust from my corral. Then the sounds of roosters in the morning. But I kept calm. I figured maybe she just wasn't used to country life. I even gave her the benefit of the doubt, until the day I noticed the water pressure drop. It was subtle, a slow trickle where there used to be flow. I checked every pipe, every valve. Nothing was leaking, but deep down, I knew. This wasn't nature. This was Sandra. She wasn't just trying to change the neighborhood. She was trying to erase it. It started with an envelope, plain, beige, taped to my front gate like a warning shot. Inside was a letter, cold, official, signed by some regional water board rep I'd never heard of. Unauthorized use of shared water line. Cease and desist. Pending review. My hands went numb. Unauthorized? I'd never touched the system, never once changed flow or diverted a single drop. But now, on paper, I was being painted as some water thief. I called the county office, tried to explain. They brushed me off, said they'd received a formal complaint, and it would have to be investigated. When I asked who filed it, the woman on the phone paused, then said in a lowered voice, "Neighbor at 1423 East Ridge." Sandra. She'd gone from complaining to trying to shut me down, officially. A few days later, a white pickup truck rolled onto my land. County water inspector. No warning, no courtesy. He stomped around like he owned the place, took photos, scribbled on a clipboard. Didn't say a word to me. Just nodded once and drove off. That night, I found her standing at the edge of her fence again, champagne in one hand, a smirk on her lips. "You're going to have to learn how to adapt out here," she said. "Some people just weren't meant to last." My blood boiled, but I bit my tongue. 2 days later, the water was shut off completely. The horses cried. My workers were furious. The pasture cracked. My wife cried behind closed doors, trying to hide it from our kids. We hauled water in barrels from miles away, every drop precious. Every day I looked at that dry trough and felt my chest tighten. And just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Sandra made her final move. She built a metal gate right over the shared spring access. Not a warning this time, not a letter. Steel, locked tight, welded into the rock like a cage for the land itself. She called it necessary protection, claimed I was the threat, and that was the moment something inside me broke, not with rage, but with resolve. I wasn't just fighting for water anymore, I was fighting for everything my family built. And I wasn't about to let some smug outsider bury it under paperwork and lies. I stopped sleeping. Nights turned into a blur of paperwork, coffee, and old ranch maps spread across my kitchen table. I wasn't just looking for justice. I was hunting for a crack in her plan. Something she missed, something buried deeper than her lies. And then I found it. In a dusty old filing cabinet behind my dad's workbench, tucked inside a folder marked Well Permit 1974, was a map. A rough, hand-drawn sketch showing a location out near the western ridge, marked with a simple X. Next to it, scribbled in faded ink, Backup Water, Ridge Aquifer, filed and approved. I couldn't believe it. My father had applied for a private well permit nearly 50 years ago, and it was still valid. Never used, never drilled, just waiting. That night, I didn't sleep. I planned. The next morning, I called every drilling company in the county. Most were booked or didn't want to get involved in a neighbor dispute, until I found a third-generation well digger named Emmett, who said one thing that lit a fire in me. If it's legal, we'll drill. I don't scare easy. By the end of the week, we were out there. Emmett, his son, and me, sweating in the heat, dust blowing in our eyes, the horses watching from the paddock like they knew something big was happening. We hit bedrock on day 2, and at 147 feet down, the drill struck it, a gusher of clean, pressurized groundwater straight from the Ridge Aquifer. I couldn't believe my eyes. Years of fear, humiliation, helplessness washed away in that rush of earth-cold water. I filed the paperwork with the state, got the official permit stamped, private well, approved. Then I waited, and when Sandra came storming down her driveway, screaming about illegal activity and environmental risks, I was ready. I stood by that new pipe rising from the ground, dust still fresh on my boots, holding up the signed state permit like a sword. "You don't own the water, Sandra," I said, calm but loud enough for everyone to hear. "And you sure as hell don't own me." She stared at that paper like it was a death sentence, and maybe it was, for her control, her arrogance, her little empire of lies. She turned without a word, slammed her gate shut, and never looked me in the eye again. News travels fast in a small town, faster than water, faster than wildfire. By the end of the week, folks who hadn't set foot on my ranch in years were showing up with truckloads of congratulations, barrels of grain, salt licks for the horses, ice-cold lemonade for the crew. One old-timer handed me a jar of honey and said, "That woman's been trying to choke this valley for years. You gave us all a reason to breathe again." Turns out Sandra hadn't just filed complaints against me. She'd filed over a dozen across the county, harassing old farmers, bullying single moms with livestock, trying to buy people out by making life unbearable. I was just the only one who stood still long enough to fight back. And when the county reviewed my private well approval, they launched a broader inspection into her activities. What they found? Unregistered irrigation systems, unauthorized fencing over natural waterways, even a few shady land deals that didn't pass clean through zoning. She was hit with fines, real ones, thousands of dollars in penalties. And the most poetic part? The county forced her to dismantle the metal gate she welded over our shared spring. The very spring she tried to claim as her own? She had to reopen it, for everyone. One morning, I woke up to find her for sale sign hammered into the dirt near her fancy front porch. No goodbye, no apology. just silence. And you know what? It was the first peaceful morning I'd had in over a year. It's been months now. The new well still hums softly every morning, feeding troughs and keeping the land alive. The horses drink freely, the grass has come back greener than I've seen in years. And the silence across the fence line? It's the kind of silence that means peace, not fear. I kept the old permit framed in my office, the one from my father, not because I needed to be reminded of the victory, but because it reminded me of the roots, of what we build, quietly, honestly, when no one's watching. Sometimes the answers we need are buried deep, but if we dig with purpose, we find them. Sandra Whitlock thought she could control the land with lawyers and letters. She forgot that some of us were raised by the dirt itself. She tried to cut off my lifeline, but I carved a new one, deeper and stronger. And if there's one thing I've learned from this fight, it's this. Never let someone else hold the faucet to your future, because when the system tries to break you, dig your own well.